what our judges and clerks and staff all deal with each day. So we met here. What we'll do first is go through this PowerPoint. This was a PowerPoint that was constructed by Matthias Anderson. He's one of our county commissioners. So I'd like to just say I thank Matthias a lot for this. He put this together. You can tell he's a data analysis person. This is what he does for a living. So it's pretty interesting how these numbers turned out when you put it all on paper. And I think that was the best way to explain this project. And that's kind of our goal tonight, is just to go back over this project again, hopefully with a fine-tooth comb, and really look at the issues that we are currently having, and the future impact of what each decision has on our county, because these are large impacts. So we'll go ahead and get started with the PowerPoint. Again, this is something Matthias put together, so just bear with me as we go through this. But giving a little bit of the background, Matthias said, when I become a county commissioner in late March 2024, I had the same opinion everyone else had. Why don't we just fix what we have? There must be a way to get the current jail into compliance. After touring the jail, speaking with numerous officials, and spending countless hours researching the topic, I've come to realize that simply updating the jail found that there was no single source to reference that answered all my questions. So my goal is to help summarize the issues at hand, what options are available, and the true costs associated with each option. So he's just going to give us an idea of what those options are. He starts with what was wrong with the current jail. For at least 4 years, the county has been advised by the Tennessee Corrections Institute about deficiencies at the jail, which might result in state decertification unless the county followed a plan of action. During a visit, TCI officials determined that the jail's number of certifiable beds at 102, which was 78 males and 24 females, must be reduced to no more than 52 beds, which was 16 females and 36 males, almost immediately, and that the basement portion of the older jail facility, which housed 23 inmates, can no longer be used for that purpose. And he says he sourced this from a WJLE article that was in August 16th, 2023. What does decertification mean? Increased insurance costs, potential federal litigation brought by inmates, which could lead to federal audits that may uncover other issues. Federal action on Knox County included $5,000 daily fine. So we've talked about that in a meeting before. There was a county in East Tennessee that refused to build some type of, whether it be a jail or criminal justice center. They didn't want to build anything. They said no. That ended up in a federal Supreme Court, where the Supreme Justice fined them $5,000 a day until something was constructed. His next point is immediate loss of any pending governmental contracts related to the housing of state and federal inmates, and the removal of inmates from a facility. And he has the link to the Knox County story there. Our jail capacity. The jail was rated for 19 females and 83 males at the total capacity of 102 inmates. 3 housing units are in the basement of the jail that do not appear to comply with any correctional standards. In 2023, the Tennessee Corrections Institute reduced the capacity to 52 male beds. In 2022 and 2023, the county was housing an average of 69 males and 16 females in other county jails. According to the sheriff, this has been the approximate average of inmates held in other counties for years. And that was a source from the jail needs assessment on page 3. And again, so we only have 52 male beds now. We have 0 female beds in our jail currently. So we're having to put them on either ankle monitors or house them in other counties. So the capacity, this is past and present. He's got, looks like what the cells are. Cell 1, 8.09 by 5 or 7.08, which is 67.61. Subtracted by 27, so 40.66 clear floor space for one inmate. Cell 2 was at 47.92 of clear floor space. Occupancy, one inmate. Cell does not meet current standards. It would require 70 total square feet with 50 clear floor space. Cell has one toilet, one sink, and a double bunk. And cell 3 was at 47.92 clear floor space. One toilet, one sink, one double bunk. And day room was 40.66 clear floor spaces for 3 inmates. Today's standards calculated as dorm would not hold a maximum of 8 inmates. Additionally, there must be a source of natural light added immediately if this capacity is to be allowable. So that was another issue we had, is they require that an inmate have natural light exposed into their cells. That's correct. There's nothing in our facility that meets the standards of TCI. So, and that was kind of a lot of the conversation of adding on to the current facility, things of that nature, because there's nothing there that will work. There's nothing that meets the standard that TCI requires us. We'll take public comments at the end, but I want to answer all your questions. Yeah. Yeah. Well, he's a commissioner, and I don't mean that disrespectful or anything. But so the location, the annex is, there's 46 old count and 30 new. The max upgrades of 30. And as you can see, the basement, they had that the ceiling was too low. In the side cell for the females, cells too small, day room too small, and they're the temporary holding only, which you can't house inmates there, I believe, over 24 hours maybe. Is that right?
You can't house them there.
You can't. Yeah, they're just holding. You can't house them. So. Some other considerations as significant challenges include an aging physical plant, an increased inmate population, and a growing community. A lack of adequate types of housing to support housing and separating inmates by their individual risk and needs. There is no program space, so programs are virtually non-existent. There's a small attorney visiting room. The kitchen is small, dated, and resembles a household kitchen. The only segregation cells are currently used for quarantining inmates. There is no female trustee housing area. Inmates were housed in the basement of the jail that does not meet the state confinement standards or any other acceptable form of correctional housing. And we do not house anybody in the basement anymore. They will not let us do that. Inmates must walk across the street and up 3 flights of stairs while handcuffed and shackled to get to court. So we're having to walk these inmates from the jail across the road, up the stairs, and into the courts. And in this courtroom, the inmates are where the county commissioners are right now in the jury box. And then in general sessions, they sit on the right side of the pews in the same pews with the public. So they're shoulder to shoulder with the public. So we don't have any inmate housing areas or housing cells here. Some other courthouses that have made it work for transporting prisoners from a jail to a courthouse, they do have housing cells behind the judge. So they have like a holding cells in the courthouse behind the judges. So they would, for instance, if that was not office space and bathrooms and file rooms, they would actually have steel holding cells behind that door over there, and they would walk the inmates in, sentence them, and then take them back to the holding cell. And we do not have that here. Can we fix the current jail? The biggest hurdle with the current jail is the lack of usable space. Ceiling height requirements alone mean the basement cannot be used for housing inmates. Based on the minimum square foot requirements, multiple cells are out of compliance. We have been allowed temporary certification status for 52 beds. However, if we fixed all other issues with existing main level housing areas, the certified bed count would be 44. So we do have a temporary certification with TCI, long as we make measurable progress at fixing our situation. They don't care if we have a jail or a justice center or whatever we do to make it work. They just want us to be able to hold the amount of inmates that we have in a space that meets all their requirements. So that is a temporary certification that is subject to change. Other issues with a courthouse. While the courthouse is not part of the jail needs assessment, it is worth mentioning that it has issues that need to be addressed. Security issues have been brought up in 2023 and 2024, but have not yet been resolved. And he says there's going to be more on this later, I guess, as into the presentation. And we've had security issues here for probably the last 15 years. We have 3 unsecured entrances that are available to the public and no security. Our next steps is identifying options. What can we do to resolve the issues? The cost, which option will be most cost effective, both now and in the future? And funding, how do we pay for it? What are our options? Update the existing jail, build a new jail or justice center in the current location, which is on the square, or build a new jail or justice center in a new location. Option 1 is to fix the current issues of the courthouse. The courthouse needs, according to the National Center for State Courts, a secured single entrance and exit. Every courthouse in which in-custody defendants appear in court should have prisoner holding facilities. Prisoners awaiting a hearing or trial, or who are in court to appear as witnesses, should be kept apart from the public and staff persons. There should be a secure holding facility within the courthouse in which to temporarily hold in-custody defendants and witnesses while they wait the start of court or their hearing. And I want to break away from that for just a second because I also wanted to address the video. There's a lot of people that think we can just do all of our court sentencing through video. We do video arraignments from time to time, but the inmates have a constitutional right to be present in court. So you still have to give them that option to be here. And I know most judges like for the people to be here in person, which I don't blame them. they use other factors like body language and a lot of other things. And you can just get a lot more accomplished in person than through video, which again is their constitutional right to be here, and you cannot rely on video arraignment or video court hearings alone. I just wanted to touch on that before I got it and lost it and forgot to make that point. Clerk's offices responsible for storing evidence should have secure, fireproof storage areas or vaults. Where prisoners must be transported from the jail or other detention centers to the courthouse by vehicle, there should be a sally port for delivery of prisoners. So that was something similar to the side of the jail over here, where the vehicle can park and it can be closed with a gate and a cell around it. That way when you're taking an inmate out of the cop car and into the jail, which in this case would be if you were coming from a jail over to a courthouse, you would get into the sally port, lock the door. That way they can't, once you get them out of the vehicle, they can't knock the officer over and take off running and leave. They're in a cell. So the only place to go is in the door to the facility. In communities where the jail is adjacent to the courthouse, prisoners may be brought to the courthouse by means of a secure walkway or tunnel. And there's a note that after reviewing recent projects and speaking with experts, the estimated cost to renovate our current courthouse could exceed $7 million. Option 1, fix current issues with the jail. Due to the current size and minimum standards around square footage per inmate, this doesn't help in the short or long term. 44 beds does not allow enough space for the current need. And, we've talked about it in our other jail meetings that we can't build behind it because of the flood zone. So we would have to tear down. We could build off to the left some and tear down the facility we have and rebuild. But we cannot build onto the existing facility. Build a new jail in the current location. So the total cost for jail only is $56,875,000. And the courthouse renovations equals $7 million. Because if you built the jail in the location it is now, we're still going to have to renovate and update the courthouse with that sally port, with security, with one secure entrance, and many other things that go along with that, holding cells. And I want you to keep in mind that the cost of building something today is very different than it was 5 years ago. They had made the claim that in 2018, the same $63 million project would have been $36 million. So it's almost doubled since 2018. It just shows you, since COVID, the supply and demand of things in the economy is just driving these prices up freakishly high. So I'm going to go on with some considerations. Financial and safety risk involved with walking inmates across the street to court, which there's been some people that's brought up some really good ideas about, doing things for safety, for the safety of our staff and for the safety of the inmates when walking them across the street, putting ballers in the ground that comes up, or parking vehicles to block the roadway. But, in the day and time we live in, there's still other concerns like someone using a firearm, shooting someone while they're walking across. Maybe somebody that's done something to somebody's family member or something along those lines. There's still a safety concern when they're exposed to the public. Local impact to citizens and businesses. During the time the square in between the courthouse and jail would be closed to traffic. So if we did build in the location that we're in on the square, the square is going to be shut down for about 3 years. I think he has on this PowerPoint how long that actually would take for them to construct this. But that means that, I guess, about to where DeKalb Title starts, between that road right there, Main Street, the East Main Street, all the way over to Regions Bank would be closed due to the construction. They would only be able to utilize the sidewalks to get to businesses. And then that has a big effect on our jamboree and many of the other special events that happen throughout the year. So it's just another consideration to be thinking about. A cost to house inmates in other jails during construction. So this is looks like at the current daily rates, this is going to be $3.7 million. Future need and expansion would require the purchase of land at much higher cost. $1 million today could be $5 million in 30 years. And that's the argument of, if you spend $56 million building the jail only, and then even if you don't spend $7 million in courthouse renovations, you only spend $3 million or $5 million. When you build that, we're talking about 190 beds no matter what we build, and that's landlocked. So once you build that facility on the square and landlock yourself, let's just say in 15 or 20 years, with the rate of our incarceration rate and population increasing, if that became overcrowded and we had to build on, you're not going to be able to build onto that because you're landlocked. You're not going to be able to keep building up. It would already be a 4-story jail facility, so you can't just keep stacking on top of that. So then in 15 years, you're going to have to invest in another piece of property and build the same thing, which in that 15 or 20 years might cost $80 million. Then you're going to be closer to over $140 million in debt in that 30 years that you took the loan out, because you still ended up having to go to a new location. So that was the good thing about going to a new location, especially one that has enough acres to work with. If you do have to build on in 15 or 20 years, it may be only a $5 million addition. And then let's say you spent $63 on a justice center, and then you had to, do $5 million later. You're only that much out. Other than instead of being $100 and something million in debt in 30 years, you're only, closer to $70 million in 15 or 20 years. After you got to think about your future investments and what the future holds for you, because we want to minimize the impact as much as we can. Building a new justice center in a current location. So we're still talking about on the square with building courtrooms along with a jail. So the cost would be $70 million. The construction time was 30 months for the jail, and then another 18 for the courts. Considerations is the highest cost. This would be the highest costing option, would be to build a new justice center in a current location. The local impact to citizens and businesses during the time that the square in between the courthouse and jail would be closed to traffic. The cost to house inmates in other jails during construction, which was the $3.7 million at the current daily rates, and the future need and expansion would require the purchase of land at much higher cost, which again, he's saying if you run out of, if you have to build on, there is no building on. So you're going to have to reinvest in this all over again, purchase land, and start the whole project over again if it ever meets capacity. You eliminate your ability to just build on somewhere and having access to free land open to expand. All right, well, the next one is to build a new jail in a new location. So this is the jail only on a different piece of property, as not yet been decided. No one has come forth on where we're going to go with this, if we did. Building and soft costs is $50,975,000. The transport cost over 50 years is $12 million, a little over $12 million, with the total cost in the building life cycle of $63,122,460. The considerations for this is you got the additional costs and risk associated with transporting inmates to court. So there is a type of liability that comes with transporting inmates on a bus. And then, of course, which he's figured in the cost of the transport costs would be the buses, the fuel, the maintenance on vehicles, the different things that come along with that transport. The additional cost for updating the courthouse needs. So you still have that $7 million, which isn't even factored into this $63 million number. So you got $5 to $7 million worth of courthouse renovations that are not even accounted for in that number. Now, next option is to build a justice center in a new location. So I know to some people this is the most less desirable option, but the reason why this gets so much talk is because the total cost is $63,817,500. The construction time is 18 months, and it's fixed cost over 30 years without any additional transport cost and risk. So it's less liability. We don't have any transport costs because I know there's been a lot of talk about it being a hotel, a large hotel for inmates, when it's nothing more than a jail with a courthouse, with a courtroom, one or two courtrooms added on to a jail. So there's not a whole lot more cost that would come into it. So it addresses the current courthouse needs, and that was one thing I think it was good to look at coming to the courthouse today. You can see we only have 4 pews of room for people to sit. So we're very limited on space. The inmates actually sit in here in the jury box where our commissioners are sitting right now. And in the general sessions court, the inmates sit in the pews with the public. There's no holding cells. So somebody that might have done something terrible to you or a loved one may be sitting right next to you. And I'm sure we've had fights in there before. I know they have. With people fighting inmates or inmates fighting someone in the crowd. And then with the lack of security in the courthouse, we again are having multiple problems that get addressed with this Justice Center option. Depending on the location, no additional land would be required for future expansion. So he's put the depending on the location. Obviously, you would have to have more acres than just the 15 acres that all the projects require. But a building that future expansion I was talking about, that might happen in 15 or 20 years. Hopefully, you wouldn't have to. But in the case that you did, just like the insurance you pay for on your cars and your home, it's good to think about the future and how it may be impacted. Let's go on to the cost of court transport. A patrol deputy per hour, which is $20.84, which is the starting patrol deputy pay as of September 1, 2024. And it looks like at the top it says there's a court transport cost assumptions using current pay scale and 2% inflation for all other costs. So an annual raise after Tier 6, which is 2%, which is a low estimate. The overtime pay rate, the standard overtime rate. The county paid Social Security and Medicare, which is 7.65%, the standard payroll tax. County retirement match, which is 5.1 or 5.41, which is a current retirement match. And the head count needed per day, which would be 4, 2 males and 2 females. Deputies per hour would be 8, assuming a full day of court. That's an 8-hour day. Court days per week, which is 4, which is average days inmates would be required in court. And weeks per year, which would be 50, which assumes no court 2 weeks per year. With 50 years of transport costs, it's $12,147,460.60. And this is using a number based on used buses every 25 years, tires every 10 years, and your basic annual maintenance. So the assumptions to show the cost over 50 years, which is the building lifespan, is the entry-level patrol deputies calculated at current starting pay rate. 2 deputies per bus required for a total of 4. Deputies would stay with the inmates until the court day completes. The cost of 2 used buses, fuel, and other bus maintenances, oil changes, filters, tires only. The cost to add secure holding areas to the courthouse. This does not include any additional liability insurance that may be required. So with your cost comparison with a 50-year building lifespan, so this is when you really start comparing these numbers and you can see the difference that each option portrays. So with your current location, that would be on the square, the Justice Center structure, again, a Justice Center on the square would be $63 million in structure costs, $7 million for soft costs. There would be no transport costs. So the total would be $70 million. And you would also if you include the courthouse renovations, would be another $7 million. So that would get you the $77 million. And I believe he portrayed that in the slide back before, I believe. Oh, I see. Yep. Yeah. I see. Yeah, you're correct. And now let's talk about a current location with a jail only. So the jail only, yeah, I misspoke because you wouldn't have the courthouse renovations if you built a justice center because it's a courtroom, essentially. So, yeah. So that would be a justice center on the square would be $70 million. If you done in the current location on the square a jail only, it would be $51,775,000 with soft costs is another $5.1 million. Transport cost at $12,147,460.60, and then you have to do the courthouse updates, which would be renovating the courthouse with security and the holding cells and many of the other things that come along with that. That would give you the number of the $76,022,460.60, which would be the most expensive option. Then we look at the 2 lesser costs, which would be a new location with a jail. So this would be away from the square. You could do a jail only, which is $45,875,000. You have soft cost of 5.1. You have the transport cost of $12,147,460.60. And that would be $63,122,460.60. This is what I meant to also include the courthouse updates, because if you had a jail only in a new on a different location than the square, you're still going to have to renovate your courthouse to have one secure entrance, a sally port, and holding cells. So that's where that $7 million in courthouse update. So you can add $7 million to that $63 million number. And then you have the Justice Center on a new location that's not on the square. And the initial cost of the structure is $57,425,000 with soft costs of $6,392,500. You have no transport costs, you have no additional land costs, and you have no cost of courthouse renovations, which is $63,817,500. So that is a good way of understanding the misconception that the Justice Center is the most expensive project when it is actually the least expensive project. And it also addresses a lot of the concerns that we have today with the current courthouse. And since I'm on that subject, a lot of people think that this courthouse that we're in today will be completely empty if we built the Justice Center, which is also a misconception. In the lower basement of the courthouse, we have our election commission office, our administrative elections office. We have the veterans office. In the middle, we have my office. We have an office for the Tennessee Highway Patrol. The only office that would be moving would be the next office on the second floor, which would be Miss Susan Martin. So that's one office that would be moving. And then on this third floor, we have our recovery court. We have our chancery court, which is civic. So this courthouse is still going to be almost completely full. It's going to be. It's not going to be wood over the windows and locks on the doors. It's still going to be a very active building. And then we got a lot of other programs going on. We had our Safe Baby Court program that was just funded. That's all grant money, grant funded. And they do a terrific job helping families with the situations that they've been put in. There's still a lot. Our recovery court is up here. There's still a lot of other things that are in this courthouse, and it can be utilized. If anything, we're out of space at the courthouse, at the current courthouse, and could use some more. I think that's our last slide. He ends it with, based on the findings, without making any courthouse updates. So he put that in parentheses, without making any courthouse updates. The cost difference between a jail and a justice center and a new location, which is your two cheapest options, equates to less than a penny based on the current property values. And our current property values right now are, our penny value rather is almost 63,000. It's 62,900 something is the value of our penny, so close to $63,000 difference. He's saying it equates to less than that, but when you add the courthouse updates, and that could be any courthouse updates, that could be anything, securing entrances, it could be sales, it could be anything. Then that just adds, even if you added $1 million, you're still $1 million, almost $1 million more of just trying to do a jail only in a new location. And then building it on the current location on the square is the highest cost out of each option. But I would like to thank Matthias for putting this together for us so we can kind of see and really put the numbers on a piece of paper and can see it. I know I went through a lot. I'm trying to think if I've missed anything.
I got a couple questions.
Yeah.
So on the current, the 50-year plan, in the current location, he's got $12 million on transportation costs for jail only.
Mm-hmm.
That shouldn't be there because they're just walking across the street. So he's got $12 million for the. He's got $12 million under jail only.
Mm-hmm.
For transportation cost. And that's if it's built in the current location. That should not be $12 million. And under the new location, he doesn't have a cost for the land, which I know we haven't purchased yet, but even factoring that in, it's still cheaper in the new location.
So are you saying,
Under
say it again,
Okay.
Tony.
Jail only, current location,
Jail only in the current location.
he's got a transportation cost of $12 million,
Yep, I see that.
but they're just walking across the road, so that really should be zero.
Yep. So let's see. Let's see what our numbers look like here.
Should be about 64. Yeah, we're still cheaper to go to new location. But I just want to clarify that. And under the new location, he doesn't have a cost for the land that we got to purchase.
And also under new location, you have to put, if you do the jail only option, you've got to include the courthouse updates because we still have a safety issue here. So you've
Yeah.
got to add the 7 for that one in the new location jail only option.
Yep. So, yeah, Tony's right. I'm trying to take one thing at a time here. Current location with the jail only. So, but I added the courthouse updates and come to 63,875. It's not cheaper than the Justice Center. It's still more expensive than the Justice Center, but it is significantly. Wait, what is he? I'm trying to think why he put that there. I guess it was just a mistake.
I think he was talking about putting Sally Port in this Hollywood Cross.
He's added transport costs in the wrong spot, I think. But it's still, so what I done is I took the 51,775, then the soft costs, and then I added the 7,000 in courthouse updates. And I got 63,875,000. So that was, I essentially just took off the 12 million and just only added the 51, the 5.1, and the 7 million together in the jail only. I took the 12 million out. So it went from 76,22,460 to 63,875. So, and the Justice Center was 817. So it's pretty close, but it still costs more than the cheapest option, which was the Justice Center.
Okay, so let me address.
So what was the other one?
Question about the cost of the land.
Yes.
I'm not sure where Matthias got those numbers that he's using there, but I definitely remember in the presentation we got from the guy that came and presented the cost of the jail, I asked him about that, and he said that that cost of the land was in the numbers he gave. Now, whether or not it's in these numbers, I don't know. Because I don't know where he got these numbers.
Right. So there's a couple. So we're not including cost of land in some of this, but your bond premium that you're going to have will pay for the land. So that was something that our financial advisor was telling us. You know, when we take the bond, we'll have a bond premium. And there's other things we can do. That cost will probably come out of our general fund. I don't think it'll be something that comes out of debt service. So we're looking at expenditures that's going to be coming out of debt service, something that we're going to have to come up with a new revenue source to fund a total project number toward that. But I mean, there's other things we can do out of land. I mean, we can buy that out of our general fund. Let's just say we spend 1.5, I don't know, just making up a number. Our bond premium is probably going to be that around in that number, just a little over 1 million. So, and there's some other things we thought about doing to make up the cost of land, like selling the land that we got over there behind the Smithville Police Department, land that we haven't utilized that we could probably sell and make money off of to offset the cost of land. And then also maybe logging the trees that are over there on the landfill, and some other things that we could do. Just trying to think about the resources that we could utilize to make up that cost. So hopefully a land cost we won't really have to make new revenue for. We could probably make that up out of resources.
So the other thing to be considered with the jail only in a new location is that if you do that, even with the courthouse updates, you're not providing for any kind of expansion in this courthouse. So in the future, if we need more court space, you won't have it if you have a jail only in a new location. So you're not addressing the need for additional space and court-related space in the future at all by building a jail in a new location. Even with the updates to the courthouse of security and putting in some, in fact, putting cells in probably takes space away from the courthouse. And again, if we have made the assumption that we're growing, we're gonna have more people committing crimes, then we're gonna need more court space. And you're not gonna have it if you build a jail only in a new location. So that's a cost that somewhere needs to materialize, and it's not in that 12 million because that's just transport.
You're wasting money there if you don't do the Justice Center with it.
Well, that's, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm for the Justice Center altogether, but I wanna know how we're gonna pay for it. That's my concern.
The thing to consider is to remember that we can build a jail outside the city limits of Smithville. We cannot build a justice center inside the city limits of Smithville. Excuse me, we have to build a justice center inside. Why is that? Because the justice center has to be inside the city limits of the county seat, and that's Smithville. So again, if you build a jail and you build it in another location, you're not doing anything to address the court space needs for the future.
That's true, Tom, and we're gonna.
And you couldn't put that with the jail in a new location, because it would have to be inside the city limits of Smithville. So you'd have to have another facility, if you want more court space, and you build the jail outside the city limits, in order to have more court space, you must put it inside the city limits of Smithville.
And we're gonna have a moment of discussion on these topics, but for the sake of time, we do have two special guests with us today. Judge Fry and Judge McKenzie. So they have offered to come up here and kind of tell us a little bit about what they do. You know, they're the ones that see this a lot. This is the courtroom that they're in when they're here in DeKalb County, which they service multiple counties. So they kind of see what other counties have and might know a little bit of insight on what works and what doesn't work. So and we're really fortunate to get their insight today, and I wanted to just stress how much I appreciate them coming. But if either one of y'all would like to come up and speak first, and yeah, Susan, can you get the lights? Dwayne was. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Gary McKenzie. I'm one of 3 criminal court judges. So there used to be 2. Judge Sean Fry was appointed by the governor. Judge, how long ago?
September.
Back in the fall, in September. He tells me that I'm the senior judge. I've been a judge for 10 years, but don't let him fool you. He's older than I am. He's been practicing a few years longer than I have. So, but I was a prosecutor in this judicial district when I began my career in 2000. First murder case I ever tried, about 24 years ago. I sat at this table right here. I was a deputy district attorney, which supervised other assistant DAs, and DeKalb was one of the counties that I supervised. And now, of course, criminal judge. I was elected in 2014. And so I know this courtroom very well. The last jury trial I ever had as an attorney, as a prosecutor, was in this courtroom, my last closing argument I ever did. So I have fond memories of that, and the sheriff and I go way back. We tried cases together, and I've been honored to be judge for him now. But there was a statement that was made about future courtroom growth and need for it. You need that now. You now have in this judicial district 6 circuit-level judges. Used to be 5. You have that operate in this court now outside of Judge Cox, you have 6 other judges that come here. And we have court dates where the chancellor will go down to the basement because I'm up here because of inmates, or the sessions is not. So we already now have scheduling conflicts. So when I'm setting a trial, I have to be mindful of how many days it's going to run. And then I have to be mindful of who has court here. And what that means for the citizens of your community is that my trial dates, I can't get them because these courtrooms are booked up. And so that means it takes longer to get a case to trial. Now, that's longer for an individual accused to have their day in court, but it's also longer for the individuals who are the alleged victim to have their day in court. And so it prolongs how long those cases are pending, which prolongs how long you have them in your local jail before they're tried and possibly convicted of felony offenses if that happens, and then the state takes over, and then you lose them. They go off to a state facility. You already have those issues now in this. The other thing is, this is by far the smallest courtroom in the judicial district in all of my counties, including Pickett and Clay. So let me tell you what that means for you. Number one, we cannot seat our potential jurors in this building anymore. There's too many. You're talking about calling in, I don't know, my clerk can help me with the number. So we call in 500 anywhere, maybe get 300 that come. Imagine putting 300 people in this room as I'm on the bench to try to seat jurors. Can't do it. There's not enough parking. Can't do it. So what we've done to try to help is we go to the community center or the complex, and that's where we seat them. I tried a trial last, I guess 2 weeks ago, Judge, maybe it was. It was an aggravated rape of a child. I mean, these are the things that we're dealing with, by the way. We're not dealing with, it's not jaywalking crimes. To be able to try a case of that magnitude or a first-degree murder case, we need at least 80 jurors, potentially, somewhere between 70 to 80 jurors to do the jury selection process, because attorneys can challenge them. They know witnesses. They're related to this person. They've read about it. To try to get to that 12 jurors in this box, we can't fit them. We put seats up here. It's too cramped. It just is. There are issues in this courtroom. I'm just telling you, I've been doing it for 24 years. These issues didn't just happen. We've been dealing with this. We had those same issues on that murder case that I tried back years ago, 20-some-odd years ago. So you already have a physical location issue. The other thing is, you've got a safety issue in this courtroom, and I think Judge Cox has talked about that as well, but you've got a safety issue in this courtroom. And I'll give you an example. You've got inmates that come in here, and they are not necessarily, some of them are not the nicest people that you would want to have seated this close to you, right? And so just the other day, we had an outburst of an inmate, and so what does the court officers have to do? And by the way, they do a great job of keeping me safe. But they have to physically restrain the individual in this room, take him out this door, and in doing so, the door swings open and hits an individual citizen that's standing on the other room of the door. And that individual was hurt and had to go to the emergency room. That happened probably a month ago, a couple of months ago. That's a security risk. The thing that having a justice center helps for you, or having cells, is if you have a secured location. For example, in a justice center setting, this door would go straight to the sheriff's department. And there would be actual physical cells outside of this door. And so when the inmates are sitting over here and they have to wrestle them out, they take them straight into that door and into a jail cell that's feet from where the inmate is. Not down flights of stairs and across the street to get you to your jail. These are just the issues. Now look, I'm not up here talking about funding or where you get the money. That's your decision. That's a tough decision. I'm glad that I'm not. I deal with tough decisions, but I'll let you make that one. But what I'm telling you is, you do have issues inside of this building. The other thing is, if you do a justice center and you have courtrooms somewhere else, you're still going to have court here. There are 5 different judges that are coming. You can have chancery court here. And so this building will not be empty. You'll have civil court and things of that nature here. But criminal would certainly be over there. So I'm just here to give you a little bit of an understanding of what we deal with day to day in here. And we've been fortunate because we've got good security up here with our sheriff's department. We've been fortunate that we've not had many issues. But I do give you that issue we just had the other day. And so those are the concerns that I see in this room. How do we try those cases? We can't fit our jurors in here, and we're really tight in these chambers. And that is something that we wrestle with every single day whenever we have criminal court up here. Those are problems you have right now. Yeah, and so, yeah, that's the other thing. So this is full completely with inmates. And then this row right here will be full with the female inmates. And so, and I don't know, how realistic is it to put jail cells behind there? Well, the difficulty with doing something of that nature is if you've got an inmate sitting here and I'm in a violation hearing or something, and you've got a witness that is sitting right up there testifying against this defendant, and this defendant has an outburst, and now you have to get him back into that jail cell, you are now taking this inmate right past the witness that's up there testifying against him. These are logistical security problems that we have. And so I don't know what the answer is. I just know that there's got to be something is probably going to have to happen. So renovations or whatever it is, but this is it's a very difficult situation to have criminal court up here with the people we're dealing with. The only other thing is I'm going to turn it over to Judge Fry real quick for any comments that he has. I will say this, in Putnam County, we just recently built up on our jail. And back in the 80s, they made a decision to do a justice center, and they put it right in the middle of town. And the gentleman that said he's absolutely correct. If you have a justice center, it has to be in the county seat. That's state law. And so they built it right there downtown Cookeville by the old courthouse. And so we went up, and we were kind of tied to that justice center because that decision was made many, many years ago. And we had to go up with that building because the cost, there was no question that that's what we had to do. But now we're struggling with parking issues, because we were pigeonholed into that area because we already had an existing justice center. And we have no room for growth. And right now the local businesses are screaming because when we have court, everybody parks there. And so we are struggling with those issues from a decision that was made some time back. So I would just say to keep in mind this physical location. If you commit here, you may have growing pain problems or things I think we've seen, and I think Judge Fry would agree, we've kind of seen that in Putnam with where we are. And so if you could get in a time machine and go back to probably the early 80s when that decision was made or whenever it was, maybe there would be a different decision made. But anyway, so that's, I'm more than happy to take any questions. Yes?
Could you speak
Mm-hmm.
a little about the sort of overall the difference in the type of criminals you saw 20 years ago when you first versus
Yeah.
what you see today?
So when I first started prosecuting, marijuana was a real big issue. And now it's fentanyl, methamphetamine. And there's no comparison between those two narcotics and what they do to individuals. And I'm not suggesting that marijuana is anything that anybody should be doing. But what I'm saying is the nature of the crime that we see now in this judicial district is definitely, we have more violent crime because of those types of substances. And so we see a lot more of those. When I first started and I was a prosecutor, it was marijuana cases. Now we see heroin, cocaine, fentanyl. These are the types of cases we're having. So the severity of crime, and I think that's probably true everywhere across the board, but it's certainly, we are seeing, and I'm sure the sheriff would agree, we're not the small town that we were years ago. So yeah, we see a lot more violent crime, things of that nature. Yeah.
Would you, if we built the jail, justice center and everything, I know the probation and stuff like that.
Sure.
I know a lot of questions asked out towns, well, they put them on probation.
Mm-hmm.
But if you had a place you could put them, you'd put them in jail, right?
Yeah, so I can't, well, let me tell you how I can answer that in a fair way. Nope, that's a good question. And of course I can't tell you how I would rule on things, but here's what I can tell you that might answer this question, okay? There's no doubt about it that when the county finds itself in a situation where they do not physically have jail space, then there's no doubt about the constraints on manpower for the sheriff to get to one place or another to pick people up. Where are we going to put them? Where are we going to house them? Medical, things of this nature. Then that certainly there is arguments made in a courtroom by attorneys to me to say, hey, take a look at this offender and, you know, we have all these issues. Shouldn't we save that space for somebody else? And so it comes into play. How many rooms are at the end comes into play in decisions that are made on judges because there's only a finite amount of space. I can't sit here and tell you I'm just going to put them all in jail. I can't do that. But what I'm telling you is having the facilities at your jail, it does matter. It does matter. And it does cause scenarios where maybe one gets probation or the district attorney will agree before they even get to me. Majority of cases, of course, is settled by agreements. And so the district attorney is certainly, the district attorney's office is certainly listening to the sheriff and feel for the bind that he finds himself in. So maybe they offer probation in a situation where if they had more jail space, they could put somebody there. So, yes, I think that not having those facilities does make a difference on how cases are negotiated in a courtroom. I think that's a fair way to answer that. Yeah, and I think the sheriff would agree. That's a good question. Judge Fry, I'm going to let you get on the hot seat before they ask me any more questions. That's pretty good.
Well, first of all, let me just say to each of you, it's a pleasure to be here. You know, was an attorney in Cookeville for 27 years until I was just recently appointed. Been coming down here to DeKalb County for a little while on the bench. I'll be down here tomorrow if anybody would like to come. And I know your time is limited, and let me just say to you again that my wife is on the school board, and I recognize that when you make decisions that are good decisions for DeKalb County, nobody comes and applauds and says thank you, but then when you have the really hard one, you know, you hear all the complaints. And oftentimes it's from a small amount of people, but are loud. And these types of decisions are hard, and that's why they get postponed for years and years and years until you finally have to make this tough decision and it comes upon you. And that's the situation you find yourself in now. You know, we talked about, you know, Judge McKenzie there about sharing this courtroom. One of the things that we're trying to really do with our calendar is speed up the judicial system. You know, justice delayed is justice denied. And back in the wintertime, Judge McKenzie and I were talking about a case that set for trial down here, and I was going to volunteer to do it. And it was literally too cold in this room to have that trial. You know, the air conditioning's nice on a day in June when it's 96 degrees, but in February, that air conditioning's still blowing in here. You have a wind chill effect up here on the bench. And we literally thought it was just too cold. We couldn't have a trial. You know, one of the aspects, and I know your time is short, so I want to talk a little bit quick, but, you know, one of the decisions that I hear you talking about today is, should you build a jail right here on the square? Now, let me tell you, times are different. When you watched Mayberry and Otis had the keys to the jail, it's not really a jail so much as it is now a mini prison. That's the way county jails are now, is they're mini prisons. And the state will, you know, one question that was asked a moment ago about inmates in the jail, you know, the state of Tennessee is contracting more and more with local certified jails to hold low-level felons that are not violent felons, but the state of Tennessee pays that, and that's a source of income for counties. That's how some counties pay for their jails. But, you know, the one thing I ask for you to really ask yourself a question, are you seriously going to consider building a prison right here in downtown? You know, as I come here today for the Jamboree about to set up, I mean, are you really going to consider building a prison right here in downtown area? And could you even consider building a larger jail with more inmates and no courtroom space to bring anybody to trial? You know, justice delayed is justice denied. And if you can't have a trial on a case, how do you seek justice in those situations? You know, how can you build a facility? And when I talk about courtroom renovations to here, I look around to myself and I think to myself, how? We can't house anybody. We house inmates tomorrow that'll be sitting in the jury box. nice cushy chairs up here for the jury. We keep a handful of seats over here for the women. What is it, 8 feet at most for somebody in the audience to hand something to a felon up here, a serious felon. And I've been surprised at the docket that I see in DeKalb County, just how many serious felons you see on the docket. If you want to get an idea of some of the serious felons, come watch, come see what a docket looks like. If you'd like a couple of dockets, I'll be glad to give them to you. You'll see the serious felons that are on those cases. And jails are not your local misdemeanor jail anymore. They're mini prisons. And unfortunately, with growth, you have these types of situations. I represented the city of Baxter until just recently, and they have phenomenal growth. And unfortunately, with phenomenal growth comes, huge expenses on infrastructure. And this process has just been delayed and delayed until now. It's a huge problem for you. I recognize it's a huge expense. The question is what other alternative do you have? You have to do something about your jail, without a doubt. You can't fix the jail and not provide the courtroom space. You just can't do one without the other. They have to be together. Fixing one problem but ignoring another one's not the thing to do. And to build it right, to even consider building a prison right here in the downtown area, I just hope and implore upon you that you consider some other option than doing that. I don't think that's an option that years from now, generations from now, that they'll be complimenting you on the decision to build a prison right here in the downtown area. Anyway, does anyone have any questions, any follow-up questions on anything I might have said, or I'm glad to answer any kind of questions.
I have a question about.
Yes, ma'am.
The courts, some of the courts still operating here,
Mhm.
even if we do a judicial center somewhere. Would the sheriff still need to be providing security for that too? So my understanding is court goes on every day, whether a judge is in here holding court or not. Because when they go to the circuit court clerk's office, they are going to pay fines or do things like that. When they go to the clerk and master, they are taking care of court business. It's just not in front of a judge. And from everything I've read, the courthouse, in addition to the courtrooms, are part of what the sheriff, secures for the people that work here in this building every day. So would that still need to be part of the calculus then, if we're thinking, we'll still have court offices here? Because to me, that does not seem very cost effective. It seems to me that recovery court, the clerk and master, and I know when I've been to some of the other justice centers, I've been to the Wilson County one, they had everything in there with their justice center. And that way, that is how it's, in my mind, that's how it's all taken care of and how we benefit from that. So please let me know if I'm mistaken.
You're not mistaken about anything that you said, really. It depends on what your future plan is. I think back to Cookeville because I've lived in Cookeville. The old courthouse, when they built the new Justice Center, people said the same things that they're saying here in DeKalb County today about they're building a hotel for the inmates over there, and what are they going to do with the old courtrooms over there? And they're filled. The county commission meets where the courthouse used to be. That's where the county commission meets now. Randy Porter and the county executive, county mayor, they meet at the old courthouse. His office is over there. It used to be the General Sessions courtroom. Randy Porter's office used to be the General Sessions courtroom. And I remember when Judge Bill Baird Griffith had court there. As Judge McKenzie pointed out, I'm the senior judge as far as age. So they took the Sessions courtroom and turned it into the county executive's office. I mean, you'll have options that, as we sit here right now, you don't really have any options on space. A new Justice Center is going to give you those kind of options. Now, a thing that I would implore upon you as well for the meantime is you're here in this facility. No matter what happens here for the next several months, you're here. And security is a real problem that something needs to be done immediately about. And, one of the aspects that we don't talk about, and I'm hesitant to say, but we just have to talk about it right now, is your clerk's office takes in a lot of money. And those employees down there are your employees. And if something happens to them, you are responsible for them. And they need security there. Unfortunately, when we have court, there aren't very many happy people present. And when people come to pay their court costs or various things, judgments against them, they're oftentimes not happy. And that's a large amount of money, and that is money that is going to go pay for the Justice Center. You need to bring in that money, and that's money that you need security for. You need security in this building badly. Another thing that you kind of hate to say, but listen, when I come here, if I was someone with a grudge, I can get in this building and get all the way right up here to this courtroom with a gun. And if I was determined, a determined person with a gun is very hard to stop. And if I was determined, I could get in here. And you need security, not just outside the courtroom doors, but before you get in the building. And it's something you need to do right away, immediately, is get some security before anybody gets in the building. I hope that answered your question.
Hey, was that addressed at all in budget meetings?
No, and I think, just not to cite it, we need to go back to this slide when they get done speaking, because I think that's some questions, Ms. Beth, that we need to talk about. I kind of wrote some notes about the courthouse.
Well, and I know a big problem about security has been the fact that we have our elections administrator office here, and it really has needed to be located somewhere else for a very long time, and I'm not sure what, the issue is there, if they've just never been asked or asked the right way, what do you need? What can we do for you? I think there's still space over at the county complex. What kind of security do we need to set up for them? Because I know they have to make sure everything's under lock and key. But I know that's the biggest issue I have heard mentioned as far as making it impossible for the sheriff to be able to have somebody here to, check people in as they enter.
Well, and hopefully, if you go with the option of a new location, you're going to have those options. If you choose the other option, you're really limiting your options.
To Beth's point, the level of security when you're trying a civil trial here is not the same as when there's a criminal trial going on.
Right.
Sheriff may have two courtroom deputies here as opposed to 8 sometimes.
Yeah. We've had that jury box full with inmates over here, and that's a dangerous situation. And it's getting worse as the community's growing. It just gets bigger. Yes, sir.
I think the thing that I think Beth is getting at is that even if we build a Justice Center, there's still gonna be some issues in the courthouse that are gonna need to be addressed. But I also think that $7 million number up there that we're saying is gonna go away if we build the Justice Center is all centered around, and that 12 million with the transport issue is all centered around the criminal part of the stuff that we would move to the Justice Center. So I don't think these numbers are really accurately identifying the fact that there would still need to be some residual updates needed to be at the courthouse, but they're gonna be a lot less than what has to be done here if we do a Justice Center.
Well, that would be exactly right. And you don't exactly know what you renovate this building for. I mean, this building's going to be here. It's going to have a purpose. It's going to have a use. You'll have the option for it to be the use that you want it to be for.
Well, we're making the basic assumption that the civil kind of cases are still going to be in this building.
When you have an adoption and you need a chancellor, he can do it in this room with minimum security. when the chancellor can't get to court because we're on the bench and he needs a place, Overton County, give you an example, they got a justice center, it's got 2 courtrooms. If you build a justice center with 2 courtrooms, we're gonna have conflicts. When that happens, when you have something in the nature of an adoption or something like that, then you can have a chancellor come in here or a non-contested day on some kind of divorce. He's got a landing place to come where we're at the other facility. That facility is not going to need holding cells. You can take minor changes of securing one entrance, all of those things are fine. But you have an option to have court here on those types of cases. And you can use that, and you would be able to, and we do that in every other county in that we have scenarios like that. That is the way you would get used to this. That price tag on this is absolutely squarely criminal. Now, there's going to be times where the chancellor may have a criminal, child support or something of that nature. He'll be at the Justice Center on those days. But the days where he's not dealing with that, we don't have a conflict. We can be on the bench and he can be right here on those adoption days and things of that nature. And I think that's what.
Well, and thinking from the attorney's perspective, we have judges who have chambers day. They don't have juries, they come. But I know our chancellor and our circuit judges can't hold chambers here because the courtrooms are occupied. So what that means is if I need, but my clients would have to go to Cookville, since that's where most of our judges live. They'd have to go to Cookville to hear those things. And you go there, and on a chambers day, you may have 50 cases on the docket over there. Well, that's just an inconvenience for our citizens, and some of you have experienced that. You know, transport all your witnesses over there, all your litigants over there, and sit there for half a day before you get heard. Because they can't come over here because you guys are.
There's no space.
Keeping up.
Yeah, there's no space.
So I think we, at least I have. I won't speak for the rest of the commission. But I've made the basic assumption that if we were going to build a justice center, that there would still be court proceedings going on in this building. And yes, there would be need for security, but not the same type of security.
Correct.
That we have to have here today. But what we've not been talking about is what did that cost and how did that factor into looking at the analysis, because we know that we still would need some level of security in this building, and how did those costs add up? I thought Matt before, he multiple times when he talked about the 7 million, he used the numbers 5 to 7 million. And it may very well be that the total number is something like, 7 million, but maybe only 5 million of that stuff is going away because of the Justice Center, but there still needs to be some stuff done in this building, but it's not gonna be $7 million worth of stuff, because you don't have all the criminal-related stuff with the Sally Port and transport and all that, but you need a heating system in this building. You need to
We need some heat in the winter.
And that is still gonna need to be done.
Yeah. Some of those things are going to still be required, and this is more along your line. You feel free to come on in here at any time. Obviously, in listening to things, the things that and I think that you need is just the aspect of that it's a hard decision, but it's time that this Justice Center and the jail be moved to a different location and get it out of the downtown area. I know that's an expensive option, and you don't make that decision lightly. But the aspect of the prison and trying to bring dangerous felons across the street, we were discussing this on the way here. Somebody that wanted to bust their brother out of jail, they know they're walking across the street at 9 a.m. A very upset victim that wanted to get back at somebody, they know they're walking across the street at 9 a.m. There's not a security expert in the world that would say that's safe for anybody.
So the thing that's in some people's minds is Well, we've done it this way for a long time. It's why I asked you the question about what's the difference in the, or asked the previous.
Judge McKenzie there, yes.
What was the difference between the kinds of criminals he saw 20 years ago versus today? So yes, we may have been getting by with what we've been doing, but the risk is growing all the time.
So it's just the facts of every community in the United States of America right now. So, Mr. Mayor?
And this is not a question, this is just a statement. He
Yes,
wants, no matter what
you.
we do, whether it be a jail, justice center, and I'm gonna kind of, Judge Cox stood 2 years ago at least, I guess shortly after he was elected in front of the budget committee, and the one thing that has been asked of the budget committee is safety for this courthouse, no matter what we do on judge, and that kind of seems to be the theme of today, or this afternoon. We really haven't, we've talked about it, but if you would look at this spreadsheet that Matthias nicely made, we might need to add to that spreadsheet right above the total column that says courthouse, because every one of those columns has a courthouse expense. When you have 4 options, there's what's laid out there. You've got, so that's because we didn't want to clean up that spreadsheet, and we may need to present that, because that's kind of, it's not misleading, but from what we've gathered here in this conversation, and as Judge Cox talked about 2 years ago, and as both of the judges here have talked about, that's a factor whether we build a justice center. We've still got things that still have to happen in this building, just like you talked about, Mayor, the building's full, whether we're here with court or with, a different aspect. And so we might need to kind of tweak our spreadsheet here if this is something that we're going to use as a staple to say this is 4 options. They're kind of, the 12,000 on there on that second column is a little misleading, and we really need to know what is the plan for the courthouse that we've really not addressed at all. 100%. I mean, that's the big thing, is what is the plan for the DeKalb County Courthouse, whether it's justice center or jail option. And that's very, very important for our community to know. Because the numbers up there, when you start subtracting off what there is, it's really the justice center is 70 million, the jail option is really 64, and then and the new location is right at 70 plus land, plus the courthouse updates that's not on there, and then the 4th column with the justice center, you got to put 64 roughly with land, if it, and the cost of what courthouse updates need to be. So I'm not trying to push that the jail option's the cheapest. I'm just saying that is definitely misleading with not putting the courthouse expenses on it.
Are you talking about the jail only in a new location?
No, she's talking about that regardless of what we do.
The entire thing.
Yeah, if we do a jail and justice center, whether it's over here or it's somewhere else, we still are gonna have some stuff we have to do in this courthouse.
In
And
this
we
courthouse?
can't
Yeah.
wait 3 years if we have, if we decide justice center next Monday night. I mean, I'm sorry, 18 months, they still standing here in 18 months. I mean, we continue to look at that, and well, 3 years down the road if it's on the same location, because, depending on all options have different amount of building construction site times. What I'm just saying is it's wonderful on a spreadsheet, but after thinking through the courthouse aspect of safety that needs to be addressed is got to be addressed on that spreadsheet if that's going to be the staple for our community to say this is what our options are. Does that make sense?
It does, but
And this is just one person's view.
right.
I'm not saying.
I see what you're saying about still upkeeping the building. It's still going to be a building we're going to have to maintenance, along with all of our other buildings. And that's not all I'm done. Not done talking yet. But I see what you're talking about with the renovations to the building. Even though if we did build a justice center, we'd still have to do something here. But that would be very minimal of what you would have to do at this building.
Not on the third column, Mayor, the new location, the jail option, you need to add at least 7 on that, because that option's not.
You're talking about the jail only in a new location.
Uh-huh.
Yes. Okay. I think we're thinking we're not going to take this and run with it. This is something that Matthias put together just to give us an idea of what it don't portray every single thing on it. It still gives you an insight of what each project costs. And again, we've identified some things to add or take away from it, but we still get pretty much the same results. So we didn't account for land, which again, we talked about that being probably in the bond premium. Now the courthouse updates to this currently. So no matter what plan we go with, I guess on an option of doing something in a different location, we know what it would cost if we try to do it, which again, I'm kind of like Judge Fry. I don't know how you could possibly renovate this with holding cells, and I just don't think that there's any way that you really could. That was just a number that if somehow you could figure it out, it would be around the $7 million number. Now, if we built something in a different, and try to utilize this or not, I think what you were saying, Sabrina, correct me if I'm wrong, is we're still going to have to do something with this building, right? Right. Well, and to that, I agree with that. There's still a lot that needs to be done here. We obviously have a really bad heating and cooling issue that needs to be addressed. No matter what we build, we talked about secure entrances. We have a way to do that, we believe. And we have talked about moving the election commission. That's not really something that we've talked about a whole lot, but it's something that could always be experimented with. But that just solves the issue of the one entrance, and then because we have to have that basement as a handicap entrance, so that would solve that issue. And again, you don't have to have the amount of security when you're doing civil court.
But we don't even have one deputy who's here every day.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and we could do that. Yeah.
That would need to happen if there's still any
Yep.
court going on, correct?
Y'all have civil
What-
court here all the time?
Yes.
If you moved all your criminal stuff to a new location,
We do everything here.
how many courts would be here illegally?
A
If
lot.
all your criminal is somewhere
Oh,
else.
if a criminal somewhere else?
Yes. Patrick,
I don't know
Patrick is
the
responsible
civil.
for
I-
courtroom safety.
I don't know.
Yes, I'm
Patrick's
responsible
not
for,
responsible for Joe Thomas's office right down the hall.
that's correct. What you're looking at is salary cost. I mean, that's what you're looking at for security. If you do have court here, yes, you're gonna have to have some additional court officers. We're required to have those 2 officers per judge. If you want it, the building secured, that costs courthouse officers. So it's up to you how much you want to do and how much you want to spend per officer, because I think that's the majority of the security that we're talking about is.
How many civil courts do y'all have here? Only, 'cause
I have,
Here, Judge Cox. Here.
all right, I didn't want to talk tonight. I was going to listen, but he tries every time I'm here to get me to talk. So every Wednesday I have a civil traffic. I have a civil, just general civil, which is collections. If you wanted to sue your neighbor over, I don't know, they stole something or something happened, a tree fell down or whatever. I've got that civil docket. And then I've got a juvenile dependency neglect and juvenile custody type proceedings that I do. I do that every single week. So that's one day, but it's basically 4 different courts, and it goes in the morning to the evening. Now, on Thursdays, that's my criminal docket. I've explained this to you all before. Thursdays is a criminal docket, and then Thursdays in the afternoon is my juvenile criminal docket. That's me. Well, I guess if you wanted to bifurcate all that, that's not for me to decide, I guess. I'll have court wherever you put me, okay?
we get caught up on somebody needing to be in this courthouse.
Well, I don't know.
Well, that's not true. There's only court.
What I understood the issue being is that if there is someone here, there's going to have to be court officers, and that's absolutely true. If there's a judge on that bench, there's going to be 2 court officers in this courtroom. The only time that ratio ever falters is when we've got multiple judges in the same building, and he doesn't have a whole lot of officers to make that work. Like tomorrow, we're going to have child support downstairs, criminal court up here in this room, my court going on over there, and I don't know how many court officers he's got, but it's going to be stretched thin. So we've got an infrastructure issue, we've got a space issue, we've got a safety issue. The only thing that I've been harping about, and Ms. Sabrina has raised, is from the very beginning, I believe, and Judge McKenzie, Judge Fry can tell me if you know differently, The only courthouse in this entire judicial district that you can walk in without getting checked and scanned is right here. I don't know of another one. I've not been to another one in the state of Tennessee. And so they've touched on greatly about the issues of the violence and different things, and people that we deal with on a daily basis aren't happy. I don't care if it's about a money judgment I grant for somebody against you, or if I do a ruling to remove your child from your care. People aren't happy here. But then what hasn't really been touched on is we have a severe mental health issue that in the time that I've been practicing law and then working with the Department of Children's Services has been exponentially worse over the last 5 or 6 years. Maybe it's a COVID thing, maybe it's more, I don't know. And Judge McKenzie runs a recovery court for the 13th Judicial District. I do it here. We no longer have folks that are just singular issue, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. It's not just drugs, it's drugs and mental health. And I don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg, but they make each other worse. And these folks that are in those situations are not the most rational. They don't think like you or I do. And the only thing I'll disagree with Judge Fry about is I don't think you have to be very determined to get up here with a weapon. You can just walk in. There's nobody stopping you at any of the 3 entrances. You walk in. You can go knock on the mayor's door, probably walk right in. You can go see the clerks. I mean, there's nothing. So whatever you do, whether it happens today, 5 years down the road, 20 years down the road, whatever it is, as far as a justice center, security needs to be addressed now. And you're going to pay for it one way or the other. And we have been blessed and lucky that nothing major has happened. But they're absolutely right. We have angry inmates, and please, if you have the opportunity to come tomorrow, and you can sit in there right beside the inmates and talk to them if you want. They're going to be right there. It would be essentially like this. The inmates would be here, the public's over here, and they don't have a little space in the middle. They got to walk right past the public to get up to the podium to talk to me. That is a major safety concern. We've been lucky so far. We got some court officers. Harley's a big guy. He scares them away a little bit, but there's only so much he can do to keep it all down. So I'll answer any of the questions you have. And as far as courts, we have Judge Knott, Judge Ridley, and Chancellor Thurman that are civil type. They do the civil law, and they're here at various times. But one of the big issues, the reason they're not here more often is because they don't have the space. Their time is better spent in Putnam County or in Cumberland County, where we all have to travel to, because they've got room there. They've got places that they can hold a court. So we're always the Lincoln lawyers here, taking our clients to Putnam County or Cumberland County to solve cases. That's not helpful to attorneys, but more so to the public. We've got to wait. And then for the jury trials, I don't know what your calendars are out right now, but if you're scheduling a jury trial today, to get a calendar here, because you all work 7 counties. We're out September, October, November, maybe even into next year already. I don't know. So we do need the space. Now, whatever option you choose and wherever those money number comes, I don't have anything to say about that. Any other questions? Too many words. There you go.
Thank you, Brandon. And Brandon's been actively trying to help us with security here, so I appreciate that. And he even thought up other ideas where we maybe contract a security company to do just the security part, not actual police officers, but it might be a cost savings of contracting just a security officer to like man the door and checking people in and stuff like that. So, but yes, we are gonna, even if we built a justice center, there are some things we'd have to address here that would still be civil court here. So probate, any kind of civil issue, child support, that kind of stuff could happen here in these courtrooms still and utilized probably just as much as a justice center would be, I feel like, especially if we had the available space for it to happen. Kind of got off there. What was some discussion we had?
It depends on the size of the, so like Judge McKenzie was saying, if you build 2 courtrooms, we're going to have the same problem we have here. If it's 3 courtrooms at the Justice Center, you can probably solve all the problems, move everything over there, not use this for court unless it's emergencies with an adoption or something like that. But if you just do 2 courtrooms, and I don't know what the plans are with these numbers, I don't know what this shows. That's always a consideration you're going to look at as well.
It was up to 3 courtrooms. So what we had put together, so 63 million is an estimated number. I want you to kind of think of that too. 63 million is not bought, sold through the door. It is a lock and key, done, everything done, estimated number. And they go on the high side in case it takes a county commission a long time to make a decision. So really, it's probably more around in the $56 million area if we done it today. But they put cushion room in. That way they can say, well, if we bid this stuff out and it gets over, we don't want you to borrow $63 million and it be $65 million. So we're banking on, we're shooting high, and then we'll actually not have to borrow as much money as we say. But that's what they kind of do to those numbers, is they just take what the number is, and then they increase it by, 4% or 5% or whatever that is. Go ahead.
That's where we also came into the discussion in saying that if in fact the numbers, the estimates were high, and that's what we did the bond issue for, then we would, this is brought us around the discussion about how do you write the bond issue. We wrote the bond, you would write the bond issue sort of open-ended. It wouldn't just say you're gonna build a justice center. It would be you're gonna make upgrades and improvements. You write it broad enough so that there in fact was money, additional money, then you could use that money to do other updates to the courthouse, buy fire engines, ambulances. You could use that money for other things that the county might need.
That's correct. Yeah, you can write a bond to where if you do have excess funds, it could go toward another building project or the courthouse, this current courthouse, or whatever decision the commission would want to make. What was some of that other discussion that was going on? Was there anything else? And I know we were talking about the numbers on here, which we'll get Matthias maybe clean this up and put something together that is a little more accurate. But I think he was just trying to give us an idea of what we're looking at and what.
He did an excellent job.
Yeah,
He really did.
I know he put a lot of time into this, weeks, and a lot of research and looking through different sources to find stuff. So, but when you're looking at it all together, the Justice Center in a new location is still going to be your cheapest option. Even though we would have some small renovations here to like your normal maintenance of a building with the heating and cooling, and maybe some increase in our revenue or in our general fund, some in security, maybe minimal security. It's still the cheaper option when you're looking at all the costs of the other options.
Which one is your cheaper option, as you're saying?
The Justice Center in a new location. Do you think differently?
Somewhat. No, I think they're almost about equally kind of, that's just, when you start laying them out, the extra columns, when I say you put the courthouse expense, I think I see the benefit and the safety really easily of the Justice Center, but I see that the prices are not, when you start putting them with what is being suggested there, now remember, I know those are suggested prices, it's
Right.
really close.
Which one is comparable? Which other option is comparable to the Justice Center?
The new location Justice Center, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. What is the other comparable
You need
option?
to add land price on that, that is.
Well, okay. I see. You're saying
There's not a land price on the new location.
right. Because that's a general fund expenditure. Yep.
And you at this current time, we do not have land, so I
Right.
would love to hope that somebody gives us a good deal, but we've kind of been through this for over a year now, and, nobody's just giving their land away.
And we anticipate that the bond premium would, and the interest on the bond would pay for the land.
But that's what I'm saying,
Right.
is yes, I understand what you're saying, because that number up there is less, with that.
Right.
But it's on that spreadsheet right now, Les, when you start subtracting some of those other things and adding, it's not far off both ways.
And even if let's say that one option is right at or the same as the Justice Center, you're addressing a lot of other concerns by the Justice Center. Our courtrooms, our courthouse, the efficiency of the justice system in itself. So it's kind of like a bundle. So it's the Netflix bundle. So you're saving on a lot of different issues. You're addressing a lot of different issues with the same price. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay,
Oh.
so, yes, I agree that at least just looking at the numbers, we need to ask Matthias, but it looks like on the new location, it doesn't include the land, but oh, by the way, the jail-only solution does not include that additional court space that was gonna be needed as well, and that has to be a different building, not with a jail, because it has to be inside the city limits of Smithville. So, and in terms of the jail-only and courthouse, you're still not dealing with the new court space that's needed. So that you might take that 12 million out of the jail-only in the current location, but now you gotta put some kind of expense for future, court requirements, cause I think we've determined here that there's a need for more court space, which you're not gonna have if you build a thing in the current location, jail-only in the current location. So,
There's 4 columns there. Do you see where, when I say 4 columns, you've got
Yes.
2 for current location and 2 for new location. Mayor,
Yes.
do you understand when I see that, do you see the 4 options? You know, you have 4 totals. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So if you take the current location, Justice Center, the 70 million,
Yes.
that's a hard number. We don't have question about it. The second column, the next 2 columns kind of go together. The current location, jail only, you need to subtract roughly the 12 million, but you gotta add the 7 back, which puts that around 64 million. But you also need to put in that factor, we may need to talk about expanding the land option there if you did keep it in the current location, which would possibly be, the Kirby land or something there. So there is going to be additional cost beyond that 64 if you stay with that option. So first column 70, second column 64 plus some land, third column, new location, jail only option, you need to add at least, a land cost because you don't have land. You need to add courthouse updates. So then you're back up to 70 on the third column, roughly. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And on the fourth column, you have new location, Justice Center, you're at 63 right there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's round it to 64 for a better math number. You also need to add land costs there, which is not there.
Right.
And you still need to do, what are we gonna do with the courthouse? Because no matter what option we do, we still got some, I'm not saying it's 7 million, but, so, for the discussion of this would be 70, 64, 70, 64 million kind of, and those are just rough.
no, that's not correct, because the 70 million number on the Justice Center does not include updates to the current courthouse.
Oh, okay, that's true, so that's even higher.
So it's 70 plus. And again, in the
And
other
that's what-
location, the jail load, the second option, you're not dealing with increased court requirements for the future.
Correct.
And you're not gonna be able to do that on the current site.
Correct,
It's too small.
and that's what the expansion land cost would
And
have to be.
then on the jail only, you're not dealing with the additional court requirements in the future, which again, can't be outside the city limits.
Correct.
And in the Justice Center, you're not dealing with the additional upgrades to the courthouse.
And these are not hard numbers. We realize this is
Right.
just a spreadsheet that was presented, and I realize that 100%. I mean, I'm just doing
Yep.
what's presented in front of me in this spreadsheet.
Right. This is just a tool to help you make a informed decision.
Yep.
Is all it is.
So no
It-
matter what, it's cheaper to build on something new.
Yeah,
Y'all can both agree to that.
To me, I still get around to saying that I agree with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I'm just
And then you
saying.
take the current spot off the board.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just say
I didn't
that's
say
ridiculous.
that.
Yeah.
But on the
I
two,
didn't say that.
new locations, we haven't even discussed infrastructure, you haven't even discussed any utilities being run out there, you haven't discussed any of that.
I'm pretty sure that was all estimated in the project cost.
He included that in his cost.
In the presentation that he brought to the jail meeting, he had all that in there of what the utilities would be.
Yeah.
It is.
Yep.
And it's why I asked him about the land, so we'll need to ask Matthias where he got these numbers.
I'm pretty sure he didn't estimate the land because Steve Bates already said that based on the bond premium and the interest you would make on your bond, you would at least make around $1.8 million, if not more. So unless you're going to spend more than $1.8 million on something.
And he might have done, that's why I said I don't recognize these numbers. He's
Right.
got at the top.
That's why we don't use that toward,
Back that out.
yeah, we don't use that toward the project. We come up with the exact penny amount that we would need to come up to pay the bill. Instead of using that bond premium to go toward the price of the project, he just said, well, we would probably use that in land to pay for the land. So if we take out the bonds and then we get a $1.6 million bond premium, then we just go buy the land with it, and then that cost is over.
But back in November, when the commission did make a decision and a vote to do a justice center, we did not have these four options. With
That's
the
correct.
And so that is a plus for Matthias and for the commission to see that there is, on one spreadsheet, some options on the table to discuss and understand, so that our constituents understand that.
Right,
I'm
and
gonna tell Matthias, he did a great job, but we need him to tweak it.
yeah, we can get him to tweak this if you want some type of spreadsheet to show the public. We can ask him to kind of put something together that.
I guess restate what I said, we only vote, there was a vote in a committee meeting, that, recommendation.
Yes.
So we have not ruled out that the jail, I mean, it is,
Yeah.
we're only getting numbers on Justice Center because that decision was made. That's why we wasn't getting numbers on jail options.
That's right. Well, actually, we were still getting numbers on jail because people were asking for them.
Yes.
So we were still doing all these options at the same time.
So on the current location, he figured that plan up on that whole corner lot, correct? Sitting over beside Justice Center.
Yes.
Is what you
Beside
call
the
lot. So I guess we
courthouse.
need to add in that 700,000 for that quarter of an acre over there that we don't own.
That's the expansion land cost that I said would need to be there, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you would have to have the 700,000.
Almost
Yeah.
$1 million for a quarter of an acre.
So, but wait, remember that nobody may like what I'm about to say, but we all know that all we have to do is to get a legitimate appraisal on that piece of property and pay that and take it by eminent domain. It isn't gonna cost us $700,000 if we wanted that piece of property.
What did I miss? Oh, what did I miss? What changed from the last meeting to this meeting where it was gonna cost $700,000?
So all I'm saying is that we were given a price of $700,000 for that little piece of property. What I'm saying is that we know that if we get a appraisal of that piece of property and it isn't $700,000, which I would guess it isn't, then we could take that piece of property for that appraisal, not $700,000.
And even with that option, again, you thinking in the future, you'd only do that if he's in the current location. If in 15 or 20 years, if you outgrow that and you can't expand, and you're stuck on the square, then you're gonna have to do the whole project all over again on a new location. And then at that time, it might be 80 or 90 million, maybe even 100. So you're gonna be well over $100 million in debt during your 30-year loan time, when you could do something on a new location for much cheaper and then maybe do a $5 million addition.
What's the debt service difference between just estimating the cheapest option versus most expensive option? By opinion, what's the debt service difference?
You talking about the penny value,
To service the debt, yes.
the service to debt?
I've seen numbers.
So 51 cents pays for the up to 65 million. Yep. And we have done some analysis on, I think I left those papers up there. Will you care to give me one of them papers? So in the budget committee, they've talked about the funding source of this. So to fund this, well, the budget committee talked about 51 cents. In that committee meeting, they also gave 10 cents to the schools. So I'm kind of getting off track from a jail a little bit, but this is something that we kind of put together because there was a question about what a wheel tax would do to help offset that same cost. So if we did 51 cents to fund that 63 million, the 64 million, and then there was 10 cents for schools. I'm reading based off of what this is going off of, because this was a 61 cent property tax proposal offset by wheel tax. So when we had the wheel tax study done, a $50 wheel tax generated $1.1 million in revenue. So if we doubled that to a $100 wheel tax, that would generate a double of your 1.1 to 2.2. And figuring that the penny value, which is what our current penny value is today, is $62,941.35. That $2.2 million is equivalent to 34.95 cents of property tax. So if you subtract that 34.95 cents to the 61 cents that was proposed for the Justice Center and the schools, it would be that you would only have a 26.05 cent property tax increase. And the property, right, yeah, with that additional $100 wheel tax and revenue. So, and that's accounting for the school's 10 cents also, not just the 51 cents. So it could be offset to 26 cents through the wheel tax option. And that, not everybody agrees with that option, but that was just something we looked at just to get a number, to have an idea of what that would look like.
Some of the feedback that I've gotten from my neighbors is that they understand what a wheel tax could generate. They are concerned and support the wheel tax, but are concerned that because we also talked about putting this on the ballot to allow people that on the November ballot to vote on this, that a $100 wheel tax would have, for some of them, a significantly lower chance of passing than a $50 wheel tax, simply because of the size of it and who that would hit. That taking that number from $50 to $100 could in fact change the vote on whether or not we could get money for a wheel tax. And they didn't like that. That in fact they liked the idea of some property tax and a wheel tax because they thought that was a fair way to do it, but they were concerned about jacking that price to $100.
Hey, you could do that if you wanted to do a $50 wheel tax. You could just figure that number back up the same way I did here and figure out what kind of offsetting that would give. Obviously it'd be a little
17.5 cents. So it would make the number
43.55. So it's a little better than 61, but so I think I'm going to stress on this point. I don't think any 14 of the county commissioners or myself or anybody else ever planned for this or wanted this. It was kind of dumped here. And it's a less desirable project. You know, a school is something much more honorable to build, or there's much more honorable projects that we could do, extending water, public water sources to people that don't have public water, and, you know, updating the roads to, you know, better condition. There's a lot of other things that we could be focusing our energy and our funds on. But the problem of today, the infection that is set in on today that has to be cured, is this judicial crisis, whatever you want to call it, jail, justice center, whatever it is. It's not something that I don't think you all would want. It's not something that I want or desire, but it's something that we have to address. and part of being a public servant is addressing challenges. I mean, that's what we were elected to do, and we have to make good, informed, responsible decisions on the behalf of our constituents. Today, we utilized a tool of something that we could just kind of help us break it down to understand, and we've identified other things, other concerns that we need to address in doing that. So I think it was a very productive meeting tonight, very beneficial.
The problem is we run out of time.
Yes.
And the county commission is gonna need to vote, if we really wanna try to close the budget by the end of June, which we may or may not be able to do, then the county commission is gonna need to vote regarding the bond issue related to this. And we've got, next week.
You nailed it. We're facing a lot of challenges, and we don't have a whole lot of time. We've dealt with it. We've been having jail meetings since February 2023, so we've been over a year now. We've discussed and looked at all the options of building onto it, to building it in a different location, or keeping it where it's at in different ways, a judicial center or a jail or whatever we're doing. But now we're here in June. We're trying to pass a budget. We've got to pass a tax levy that is going to fund whatever it is that we're going to do, whatever we decide. The only time you can set your tax levy is when you appropriate your budget. You can't come in the middle of the year and change it. It's once you set it and it's voted on, it's set until June 2025. So we've got a lot of concerns to address. The time, like Tom's talking about, the reason why that's so detrimental now. The decisions you're going to be making this month will impact DeKalb County for the next 100 years. If God lets the world last that long, that is. I don't want to put any more extra weight on your shoulders than what it already is, but I want it to be realistic that these are hard decisions, but I think we have had enough information presented to make a good decision. I think there's enough here to see. And then one reason we're meeting in this courtroom today is this courthouse has been kind of forgotten. I mean, unless you're here to pay a speeding ticket that you got or something, or get picked for jury duty, most of the time people never see this place. So you don't realize that there's only 4 pews and that we have 3 unsecured entrances. And yeah, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to this building. It's something that was put together in 1970. Joe L. Evans got the Model City grant that got us this great building. And it's a historical building. It's beautiful, but it's a different day and time. It's not the Andy Griffith Show. That's my favorite show, by the way. It's not Andy Griffith days anymore. Otis don't put himself back in there and hang the key up. It takes more than Barney Fife to hold it together. But is there any questions that anybody has, or any more information that anybody would like to say before we cut loose on anything? Thank you. I appreciate that. I needed that reminder. One thing is, we're going to have court. I know several people's mentioned it. We're going to have court tomorrow. I would like for anybody to come, especially our commissioners. I'm going to try to do a tour that morning. What time do they normally walk the inmates over? Is it like, 9 or so?
We got
Before that?
Well, it's gonna be a little messy tomorrow.
Is it?
Criminal court, I've got prelim docket.
Yeah, we're all.
So it's everywhere. Be here at 8 o'clock. So you can see them walking inmates across. you can see all three courtrooms utilized at the same time, how many people are waiting in the hallway that are blocking all the entrances and exits, the long lines to get to the courtroom. I remember I got summoned to court one time and walked through there, and I was like, I'm never going to make it through all these people to get in there. And then shoulder to shoulder. The pews are shoulder to shoulder all the way down. And that's with public, with inmates. And then you got people standing in the hallway where there's no room to sit down in the pews, and they're lined across the wall, just trying to find somewhere to hang out. So come and check it out. I think that will be really beneficial just to see, and even just to tell your constituents, hey, I was there, I went to court, and I saw how packed it was, and you can kind of share that experience that you had. I think that's all I got. Anybody got anything? Yep. You got anything? Anybody, officials or anything? All right. Would anybody like to make public comments?
So when your courtrooms are packed, is that like a fire marshal issue?
So normally I don't take questions during public comments, but I think this is a good thing. So we're going to, in this public comment session, I'm going to actually answer questions for anybody. Her question was, with so many people being packed in a courtroom, would that be a fire hazard, like for the fire marshal's office or something? And that's absolutely a concern. And if they were notified while we were having court, and I don't know what the circumstances would be, but it probably wouldn't be too good. Probably be having court at the complex. But that was a good question. Anybody else got a comment or question? Or Stephen Cantrell?
Do you want me to do it the normal way, identify where I am? Because I did move finally.
Oh, did you move?
District 5.
District 5.
Okay.
Stephen Cantrell.
I just got some quick comments, but first I'd like to thank the judges for their insightful comments, excellent food for thought, especially.
Do you want the mic,
Matthias'
Stephen? Yeah.
Okay.
I can hear you better.
I don't sing. I have some quick thoughts, but first I'd like to again thank the judges for their insightful comments. Excellent food for thought, and I wish Matthias had been here because I thought his presentation and pulling of the information was great. I had some questions also on some of those numbers. My first comment is there is a county courthouse safety and security plan that's sitting on the shelf ready to be put into place. However, it was put on hold because, quote unquote, a future justice center is coming, so we don't need to implement it. So based on Judge Fry's comment, we need that now. So that's my first comment. Second, there is in fact, the fact that, as you just discussed, that our courthouse does not have room. Well, again, time for the non-judicial offices to move it out of the courthouse with Mayor, you leading the way, and then turn budgeting for enhancements to the courthouse, which are needed now as we wait for the future of a justice center. The county was accused by a taxpayer of having already signed a contract for the building, but as the mayor pointed out at that meeting, it has not been signed. However, with this committee voting and selecting one option in the past, it's understandable why taxpayers believe a contract was signed. My concern is that any potential contracting competitor in the future, because I assume the construction still has to be put out for bid. My concern is that if that competitor loses the bid for the center, they'll take the county to court and sue for unfair competitive advantage, which has obviously been given to the firm the county has been dealing with because we haven't been talking to anybody else. Not addressed in the Justice Center and Matthias's paper, for example, is the demolition of the old jail and the potential sale of that prime downtown location in the future, which might be, again, revenue. And then just a comment, because I've heard it from some of my fellow taxpayers, as for the discussions of a wheel tax for funding, their concern is any proceedings from a wheel tax need to go towards improving our roads, which are a critical part of the lives of each and every taxpayer and their family. So thank you for your time.
Yeah. Anybody else got any comments or questions or anything we can address?
I'm curious to know what the commissioner's constituents are telling them.
because we have 2 or 3 commissioners who speak and nobody else does. So I'm concerned with what the people are telling y'all, what the people of your district are saying about the tax increase or the wheel increase or the justice center versus a jail or.
I'll be glad to address that. I'm from the 2nd District. I've had some talk with me today. They said the $100 would not pass. They're totally against that. On the
If it's
wheel
put to a
tax,
vote on
they
the.
said the $50 might be understandable. They didn't say that would, but they said the 100 was out of the question. And I've not had the first one in my district say, we want a criminal justice center. Not had the first one.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's what I've
Some
not
of the
been.
other districts, I
You
mean,
know.
because I know your phones have got to be ringing.
So, I will tell you, mine is, I hear more for the wheel tax than I do property taxes going up 61 cents. I mean, to me, that is ridiculous. I own 2 cars, average home, 2 cars, $200 compared to your extra property taxes of $600, $800. So it's kind of not, I'm not getting the same feedback as, we want less wheel tax and more property tax. I'm not getting that. Tony might, he's in my district, I'm not getting it.
Everybody I talk to is for the wheel tax, and
Out of the 2.
it's probably 60-40 on whether we build jail or build a justice center.
64 or 60 against?
60 against.
And you're in the same district?
Yes, Tony's my counterpart.
Your partner in crime? So you're saying they want the wheel tax and not the property
I'm
tax?
telling you, nobody wants anything.
Yeah, pretty much. They don't want nothing.
Well, we
Out of the
understand.
2 options.
I mean, I don't want anything either, but I know something's got to
More
happen.
people are, that I spoke to, are for a wheel tax, less property, than less wheel tax and more property. Because your homeowner, your property taxes are gonna go up more than that wheel tax increase.
Right,
I mean, way higher.
So and for me, early
You're my
on,
district.
in District 1,
Choose your words wisely.
I was threatened, called names. The very thought that I would vote for even a jail was cause for
How many people?
campaigning against me.
Wasn't me.
Okay,
I'm first, it was not
okay,
me.
so-
Everybody know that.
But what I've sensed over time is that feeling, maybe not from the one that threatened me, but from others, is that they're beginning to understand what the situation is. I've had them tell me, we understand the issue with the jail/justice center. We understand the issue about the school, because that's been kind of confused with this. We don't want to pay for either one of them. I just told you most recently, I had someone stop me and say, we're really concerned about the $100. We like the $50, but we think $100 is gonna fail, and we think that's a mistake, to try to go that far. I'd say that generally, people don't wanna spend a bunch of money on this. They think prisoners ought to be, the fact that the jail is a crappy place is good, that prisoners shouldn't be given any consideration, but we all know that the state and federal government have a completely different view of that, okay? And so it doesn't matter what we might personally think about the conditions for prisoners, the state and federal government have a different view of that. So it's been somewhat all over the map. But I think people are beginning to realize and understand the need for a jail/justice center. I think they're still struggling with trying to understand why a justice center versus a jail. But I also sense that, at least for some of them, they're warming to the understanding of why we're saying a justice center.
I'm glad Mayor number 2.
property taxes, I afford $100 wheel tax. That's $8 and something a month per vehicle per person, $8. My tax book, will cost me around $800 more a year. So which is the best? I'm asking y'all right now, which one's the best option? The wheel tax or the 61 cents property tax?
I was just curious about your constituents, what you're hearing.
I'm hearing no negatives about it. Everyone I talk to is for the $100. I explain it to them, and they say, I'd rather pay $100 than pay $700.
Well, people I've talked to in my neighborhood, they're the wheel tax, okay. But then they're turn around and they're afraid of, oh, the wheel tax is not gonna do it, so you're gonna take our taxes and jump him up also. And they're think we're gonna get a double whammy, so, and that's why I come tonight. I
And we
wanted
are.
to say that.
We are gonna get a double whammy.
I mean,
Well,
and that's what they're
as
concerned
a,
about.
as a property owner, I'm
And-
sick and tired of being the prime responsible person of updating all the county properties.
And-
A wheel tax, how are you going, I'm not for $100, I'll be honest with you. That's way, there's only one other county in the whole entire state of Tennessee that pays $100, and that's Lake County. Everybody else, I went through today and I wrote down every county's wheel tax in the whole state of Tennessee. We can provide that to you tonight.
Yeah.
And the amount that they pay.
The average is $51
Yes,
and
44
cents.
cents.
Yeah, that's correct.
On the other hand, well, I just lost my train of thought,
Well,
but.
whatever this committee decides to do,
I just
here's
see
the
it
thing.
as
You directly impact the taxpayers of this county. You're coming to them to ask the taxpayers of this county in under 3 years for either a 50% increase on property taxes, plus a wheel tax, or slightly decrease, not hardly 50% in property tax, but again, a wheel tax. Once a wheel tax goes on, it never comes off.
Right. And
If it
also,
does go on there needs to be a cutoff date. It's on there for 10 years, 20 years, whatever, and it comes off, right? Because Cannon County did the same thing when they built the high school. It was gonna be on there just until the high school got built. And that's been 40 years ago, and they're still paying for the wheel tax.
and what's the plan for people who go, oh, wheel tax, I'm not even gonna register, I'm not even gonna renew my tax at that point. They'll find a way to skirt around that.
The property owners
Yeah.
that have spoken to me, their concern about the $100 is that they like the mix, but they're concerned that the $100 will drive the non-property owners to the polls to vote against the $100 wheel tax, because they're not gonna pay the property tax. Yes, they may pay it through increases in their rent or whatever, because the landowner or property owner increased their expenses, but they might not so much go to the polls for a $50 tax, but they sure as hell gonna go to the polls for a $100 tax. And they don't like that. They would like to see the $50
It has to come
tax.
from somewhere. I'm not stupid. I know that has to come from somewhere. But to just off the bat go with the highest in the state, I think is too far of a jump.
Yes, we've been going over this for a long time, the commission has, but due diligence needs to be done. This, you said it yourself, Mayor, it impacts the cap for 100 years probably. So due diligence needs to be done, and this isn't a rush, because I got the numbers from TCI. I have the I put a public information request in, the 5 jails that are decertified. The oldest ones have been decertified since 2009, and nothing's been done to them. TCI still comes in and does their audits. They don't do anything to them because they don't have the power to do anything to them at all.
Yeah, their regulatory power. However, it only takes one time
And that one in
for the
Knox
ones that
County-
have been
that one in
fined.
Knox County,
Yeah.
I researched that one too, and the only reason that became an issue was because numerous incidents in that jail, and an inmate died due to negligence, and a federal lawsuit was filed against everybody there, and that's what forced the issue. They let the female inmate die due to negligence from medical care.
But I think Patrick would probably tell you there's been multiple incidents in the dormitory we have over here too. It's just a matter of how long is it gonna be before one of them is serious enough for a judge to say, you gotta do something about this.
Yeah, we got I released the WJLE and Smithville Review today of news stories of where we've had fights because we can't classify inmates and there's nowhere to put them. I mean, there's 48 beds in one place, you
I'm
know.
not saying we don't have to do something, but if it's just a rush and get something done, we got time. As long as you said it yourself, and DCI told me the same thing. As long as we're working toward a plan, they will continue to certify the jail, right?
If you have measurable progress on a
And we're-
plan,
and see what
and we're making measurable progress, but once we stop, we're not making measurable progress anymore.
So just remember that if this commission doesn't vote in this coming budget vote to do a bond issue to do this, there will be no measurable progress for the next 12 months.
Part of our plan of action was this budget, and we went since February 2023.
No, you went farther than that. We've been decertified prior to COVID.
Right.
We're
Yeah.
4 years.
Yeah, we've been 4 years in it really,
Yeah.
but
This commission has.
yeah, yeah. So, but once this budget cycle is over with, that was part of our plan, and our plan of action was to budget for it. And then the rest of our plan, master plan, that was supposed to be our measurable progress plan, it was construction. It wasn't planning. We've actually already exceeded the planning phase. And I get we don't want to rush into anything, but the longer we wait, the more expensive the project is going to get. He said it was like 5% annual increases in construction costs. So that's just something, and I'm not saying, you know, we need to do it today. I'm just saying we've got to make some type of progress, and we're here at the budget. We've got to set a tax levy. And whether it's, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I suffer more than anybody here because I have to put inmates somewhere. And that time is, I suffer probably more than anybody here because I'm responsible for placing inmates somewhere. We can't legally hold female inmates there. So we have to find a place for those to go. And like everywhere on the beginning, it was fairly easy. But then those counties are thinking, well, you know, that's DeKalb County's problem. That's not our problem. Same way we'll do when we get our jail. So it's getting to be either farther out that we're having to go to Bedford County and farther counties, or we can't move them at all. So there's more than just money issues that we're looking at here, because there's going to come a time they're going to say, y'all had plenty of time to do what you're going to do, and now, and the cost of the transportation of inmates back and forth, like tomorrow, we've ran today to pick up inmates for tomorrow that'll come over here and stay 10 minutes before the judges and then drive 2 hours back to where they're going. So there's just more than looking at the amount, because you're paying other counties to hold that too, and the responsibility for housing inmates for this county falls on this bunch right here. That they have the responsibility to do that, and I can only put them. So I don't know what is going to happen when they come and say we're not going to take anymore. I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know.
And the jail issue is not a new issue. You can think we don't need to rush, but we knew there was an issue with the jail when they built this dormitory over here, which in my opinion was a waste of money. So we've known about this problem for a long time, and it's just been pushed down the road and pushed down the road and pushed down the road. And I think one of the judges said you pushed it about as far as you can push it.
Yep.
Now you got to do something.
That's.
Question, I don't really know all about the judicial system, but you were saying that, you could hear cases that are being delayed. So that's tying up our jail system?
That is correct.
So
Yes,
like
ma'am.
when they have their court hearing or whatever, their court appearance, and you decide what
state jail.
which frees up bed space in your jail. But you still, they can't have their court sessions.
That's correct.
Because there's not enough space for them.
That's correct. So it's
I think the judicial, the justice center is perfect.
that's some of the issues that we're facing. I mean, there might be, if you charge somebody today, it might be a year and a half before somebody goes to trial, and we're sitting down there holding inmates that are just there. Nothing you can do with them that can't make bond.
And like you said, you're having to pay for these other inmates to go to other facilities.
That's correct. And we pay for their medical and everything that is there. And of course, inmates that we move to a different county are not happy inmates because their families are not going to drive 3 hours or 2 hours to see them. So. Yeah, but they cause trouble, you see, and then that jail calls you and says, hey, they're causing trouble, you're going to have to take them somewhere else. So I really feel sorry for my jail sergeant because she has an enormous task of finding places for inmates to go, because you can almost bet on a daily, at least every 2 days we get a female, and some of those are held without warrants. Or they can't make the bond, and they gotta go somewhere. So it's been awful. It's very stressful at the jail of placing inmates.
Well, I'm not really fond of having people walk across the street when I'm up here trying to shop.
That's true.
You know?
That's true. I understand. Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Overcrowding in the courtroom, God forbid there was a fire. All heck would break loose in here, and safety would be out the door.
I think the bottom line for all of this is money. I don't think anybody cares if you wanted to build something if they didn't have to pay for it. But as a responsible landowner and have been for a long time, I just don't wanna be the only person who puts the bill for it all. I think that if you live in this county, at some point, you need to be responsible regardless if you own land or not. So, yes, a wheel tax would work, but I want people to be responsible and register those cars, and, I want it all to work together. I just don't wanna be the only one responsible. Landowners, not me. I don't want landowners themselves to just take the burden of this.
If they don't do the wheel tax, then they get citations. I mean, that's, you better bet this bunch up here and the citizens of this county demand their sheriff's department write citations because they're having to pay theirs, and I don't blame them. The city or anybody can write the citations, THB or whoever, and we'll commit to that. I mean, because if I'm going to have to buy them, it's just like insurance. You got to have insurance on a vehicle. If I got to have it, you got to have it. So. That's true, and they get citations. Judge Cox sees it about every Wednesday. Yeah, every Wednesday.
I will say this to that effect, since we have new jurors coming in July 1st. When I print out that list of 500 names, I asked the Department of Safety, send me 500 names of driver's license in DeKalb County. I cannot tell you how many phone calls I've already gotten. Oh, I live in Cookeville. Well, your license say you live here. Yeah, but I reside in Rutherford County. So that happens. I can promise you that happens a lot more than anybody really knows. Right. So.
Hey, Matt, will you do us a favor? Will you touch on the tax freeze that we did a few years ago? I don't think a lot of people know about that.
That's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up, Tony. So, we have passed before this because we kind of foresaw that this was coming along. We didn't really know what we were building. We just knew that there was going to be something. It was going to cost a lot of money, and it was going to be a burden on the taxpayers, especially the property tax owners. So we passed a property tax freeze. So this was for senior citizens with 5 acres or less, and it was based off of low income, and I can't remember what the number was, like $35,000 or under annual salary, something like that. I can't remember. But you can go to the trustee's office and apply for that, and it freezes your property tax at whatever dollar value it is. Let's say it's $450. it will freeze it, and you will pay $450 every single year that freeze is implemented. That has already passed. We passed that prior to this, knowing that there would be a property tax. We advertised it. It was on WJLE. There was already over 200 applicants that applied for that and have been awarded. So there's 200 citizens in DeKalb County that have applied for this freeze and got it. So, and that was the vulnerable people we were worried about hitting. You know, those elderly, low-income people. So, yeah, they have to apply every year, which Sean tells them that, I'm sure, at the trustee's office, that they have to come back and apply. And the reason why you have to apply every year is because your income may change. You know, you may have exceeded that income for whatever reason. So anytime you get some type of benefit like that, you got to keep reapplying. Or at least getting reassessed. So, but that was good to touch on. Those vulnerable people, we've tried to help dampen that blow a little bit through that tax freeze. And some other things that while we're talking about revenue sources, a lot of people's talked about impact fees. Impact fees is a grandfathered in thing, just like our hotel motel tax is grandfathered in. Normally that would have to, like if you didn't have one today and you implemented one, it would have to go to tourism. An impact fee is grandfathered in by every county that has an impact fee. I believe it was 2006 is when they made the state statute that you can no longer have impact fees. The counties can no longer make a resolution to do that. So that is off the table. And unless the state changes their mind and gives it back to us as an option. Now that would be something wonderful to have had, especially since the housing and the population increase that DeKalb County's seen grow and flourish. We did not get any impact fees for it. We cannot implement impact fees. So I know I've got a lot of questions about that. And then I've gotten some other ones about like making up a new tax, like whatever that tax may be, you know, motor oil tax or rental tax or whatever. You know, we can't make a Big Mac tax and charge tax to every Big Mac that's sold. So, and to explain that a little bit, your state representative and state senators are lawmakers. The county commission is your law abiders, just like everybody else. The state tells us what we can and cannot implement. So if the tax hasn't already been created by some statute, there's nothing for us to be able to enforce because we don't have the authority to do that. So I just want to kind of make that known also. I was trying to think, there was another tax that somebody had mentioned, that tourism. We already have hotel motel tax, which is similar. Yep. Yep. So right now we have a hotel motel tax it was implemented a long time ago to go into our general fund. So it funds everything. I mean, it kind of just goes into a pot of money, just like property tax and a lot of other taxes go in a pot of money that funds everything. Fire department, sheriff's department, courts, you know, everything that we do. So that's what our hotel motel tax is doing. Now Tony had mentioned that you can raise it to 8%, I think it was, and then his recommendation was 3%. That 3% increase, because you can only go to 5%, that additional 3% go to tourism in some fashion, instead of just going to the general fund to fund everything. And that's something we would have to get passed to the state. And so we won't be able to even move on that till they get back in session. Anybody from the public want to make any more comments?
Regardless of what you decide, Justice Center or the jail, it needs to be kept where it's at exactly now, because everybody's used to it being there. And I'll just present this question to everybody, not just the commission, but everybody sitting in this room. Who in a residential area, would any of you want this built in where you live? Would you?
We had some options, not in residential areas. And somehow, maybe the city didn't wanna get
see 61 cents as a huge tax increase and $100 wheel tax as a huge increase. And, you know, they see times are hard. You know, times are just hard on people. And I don't think anybody's against Patrick Ray and what he needs. I don't think anybody's against putting the bad guys in jail.
I don't either.
I mean, I know.
I really don't. I don't either. I don't think
I
that's
don't
the
think
problem.
anybody is against, you know, God bless this courtroom. And, you know, I'm one that said that, you know, they've been walking across the street for 100 years and, you know, I've been personally involved in that myself with the situation, and they were walked across the street, and, you know, it's a big thing. But I think what you boil down to is, when you throw out 61-cent property tax and $100 wheel tax, people back up and say, I can't do it. I can't put food on my table. I mean, just this week, I had 2 people say, we didn't get the EBT cards for summer that we thought we were gonna get to feed our kids over the summer, and their kids are eating boxed macaroni and cheese and hot dogs every day because that's all they got. That's all they can afford. And when you talk about putting that kind of an increase on those kinds of people, they're backing up and saying, dadgum, y'all, I'm doing all I can. And I think that's where the conflict is coming in. It's all at once instead of a little at a time. We just had 27 cents last year. 27 cents hurt a lot of people. You know, it made a difference in me. I got 300 acres. Makes a big difference. So when you start putting a $100 wheel tax on top of that, it's 61 more cents. And they're saying, well, what if that don't pay for it all?
Yeah.
What if, like I said in a previous meeting, what if 63 million don't touch it? What if whoever, Mr. Cantrell said, you know, about the bids and all that, there's so many what ifs. The property is a major what if. It's so open-ended, the infrastructure of what's gonna be at the courthouse, what's not gonna be at the courthouse. This courthouse needs to be secure tomorrow. I mean, it needs security tomorrow. That needs to be dealt with before any judicial center, jail, or anything is dealt with. It needs to be tomorrow. These guys need to be safe. Susan needs to be, glass in her office, whatever it takes. You know, a person at every door.
Takes money.
Well, it's gonna, that's a lot of money.
Right.
But that security needs to be done now.
I agree with you. I'm gonna come grab the mic
Yeah.
over here. Listen, I want to say to each of you again that we appreciate, you know, that this is a hard decision for you. If you have any questions about anything, we're glad to help in that regard. And seeing that I'm going to have court in this room in 12 hours, I've got to eat some dinner and get some sleep. I'm going to move to adjourn this meeting. So that's my motion to adjourn. I've got to go home and eat some food and get back here in 12 hours.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you.
I'm just right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm just making
Appreciate
the
you.
motion. I'm going to let
Yeah.
somebody second it.
All right, hold on here.
See you in the morning.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Going off of her thing, she's 100% correct. This is gonna be terrible for everyone. The problem is, these aren't problems from 2024. These are 25-year ago problems, and everyone else swept it under the rug. It fell on y'all 14 and the mayor to get together and have to fix this problem. I think, no offense to anyone, I'm the youngest paying taxpayer in this room, so I'll probably, Lord willing, I'll be paying on this until the end. Do it right the first time. Don't make me have to pay for this fix 30 years from now. That's my big thing on it. So.
Thank you. And you addressed a lot of concerns. All these figures, no matter what option you pick, has questions, you know? No matter what we do, has questions. No matter, you're going to have to fund it some way or another. And I think we've looked at the funding sources that we have available, and I'm a taxpayer too. I mean, I pay just as much, and it's going to hurt. Whether it's a wheel tax or whether it's a property tax, it's going to hurt. I don't want to pay for it either. I mean, I'm in the same boat you all are in. But I don't think there's a really good option. I can say, no, I don't want this, or this isn't good. This is, this is going to affect me. But I guess what I'm wondering is, what are the other options? You know what I mean? If we're not going to do 61 cents, and then again, that $100 wheel tax was to offset the 61 cents. So surely to goodness, there wouldn't be 61 cents and a wheel tax. Well, yeah, till it's set in place. Yeah, you're correct. But it is what they're trying to portray is that if the $100 wheel tax went into place, which yes, you would have to pay a 61 cent property tax increase. Then when it went over into time to collect wheel tax, you would collect the $100, but when you come back around for the property tax, it would offset it down to in this example we had where there was a $100 wheel tax that generated $2.2 million. It would make a 26 cent property tax increase with a $100 wheel tax. That's if you pass the $100 wheel tax. And I think the position from the commission was to put the wheel tax on a referendum to be voted on by the people. They're not going to vote for it. They're going to put it straight to the election and let the people decide whether they want the $100 wheel tax, or if they do not want the $100 wheel tax, they'd rather have the property tax. So they're putting it back to the voters, and the people will get to decide that. And I feel like that's fair. That's a big decision for 14 people. So if they'd rather have a $100 wheel tax to offset that 61 cent property tax increase and make it 26 cents, afterward, then that's the people's choice. But those are our only two revenue sources that we're allowed by statute to use in the community. And again, I want to stress on how much we really don't want to do any of it. I mean, if we don't want a property tax increase, I don't want a wheel tax increase. I have to pay that. I don't want that either. And I see that there's not a good option. There's no good options. It's a lose-lose situation as far as the taxpayers. But I don't want to keep anybody out too late. I know people are tired and hungry and everything else, but I just want to recap on what we've done tonight. We've talked a little bit about everything. We've talked about revenue sources. We've talked about each project and kind of what you could see that it would cost and the benefits, pros and cons of all options that we have. Kind of looked at how the courtrooms are currently and the current courthouse. And again, there's some things that we can address here no matter what we have to do. But with that, look for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by.
Jeff Lay had to leave.
Oh, there we go.
He told me to make sure I done it.
Okay. Coel made a motion to adjourn. Seconded by Daniel Cripps. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you for everybody that tuned in. Share this with your friends and family. Get the story out. That way everybody can see the cost analysis of this and the things that are, again, the misconception of a lot. We've went over the plans. A Justice Center does seem to be the cheaper option. There's a lot of other considerations that got brought up tonight to go along with that. There's a lot of different funding sources that we have explored, but we're really down to the two, the property tax, the wheel tax. They've got plans on sending a $100 wheel tax to the referendum to let the people vote on it in November. And that will offset the property tax that was 61 cents to a 26.05 cent property tax increase if that $100 wheel tax of additional revenue was also added. So